Hey everybody, and welcome to the second installment of Board Game Rating Changes. So this is a series of videos where I take a look at games that I've rated previously and see how those ratings have changed. Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. Before I get into the 10 games I'm going to talk about, I want to give a shout out to kienda.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer in the UK. Got some great games at some great prices, but let's get started. I'm going to go through these lists, through this list from least favourite to my most favourite, at least as a starting point. So the old rating is going to be where I'm going to start with. So the first game I'm going to talk about is a game called Terra. So this is a cooperative game. But you're, of course, working together. You're supposed to be this, I suppose, a dive team that have been trapped down a mine shaft. You're trying to navigate through this mine shaft by placing tiles. You can peek in, you can charge in blindly, try to overcome all these hazards. And it uses that pandemic system, where you have a certain amount of actions and you can spend them accordingly how you like. Has a kind of a ticking clock where you're going to be pushing your luck a bit, or pushing as fast as you can, because the longer you take and the longer you kind of dawdle, it will potentially catch up with you and kill you all, basically. This one I used to rate a 4. I didn't enjoy it. I'd never been a big fan of the game, but I thought a lot of that might be because, it's not a bad game, it's not a terrible game, it's just not my tastes. I don't really get a lot of fun from it. I think it maybe goes on a bit too long, and because you know that the end tile is in that kind of bottom few tiles, then you're kind of really going through the motions for a lot of the game, just biding your time to get to the end, and it doesn't really feel like there's any kind of peaks of excitement. It very much plateaus for me. And unfortunately, this game has actually gone down from a 4 to a 3. I think I actively dislike this game. I don't like it at all. I don't get any fun from it. Again, it takes too long, and it's kind of one of those games I'm not really interested in playing. It's just not that well put together, and I think there's a lot better cooperative games out there, despite me not being a massive cooperative game fan. So, can't recommend this one. I think it's just not fun. It takes too long. Potential for player elimination, anticlimactic moments, and just not a good game. That is Terra. The next game is Love Letter. So Love Letter, a game that I've had a really good kind of relationship with it over the years. This is kind of one of the first small card games I ever played, kind of in the modern board game hobby when I got into the hobby. This one is a micro game, as you're basically trying to eliminate players with some take that cards. You want to be the last man standing by holding a certain card when it comes to the deck being depleted. You can peek into players' hands. And as these kind of games go, this is probably one of my favourite ones. A lot of these games I don't tend to like, but this one, again, is a decent one. It's a true filler for me. It's a relatively quick game, very low rules overhead, and has some pretty fun moments. I think the only reason why this one slipped down is because I played this one to exhaustion. This is probably one of my most played games ever. And I think those kind of returns have really diminished over time, and it has become a bit of a game of, again, going through the motions now, and I don't really get too invested in it because I'm just kind of playing by ear, just playing things on autopilot. But the game is fine. It's gone from a 6 down to a 5. So again, not a bad game. It's just not something I'm really going to advocate to get back to the table, because I feel like I've just done everything you could possibly do with this game. But hey, I do have some nostalgia and some sentimental connection with it, because I've had so many great games with it over the years. So that is Love Letter. The next game is actually going to be a positive game, going from a 6 to a 6.5. So still just shy of a Shield of Quality, but who knows, that is subject to change. This is Q-Birds. So Q-Birds I played for the first time a couple of months ago on the back of a viewer's recommendation. A very simple set collection card game where you have a market of cards, which are these birds, and then you're basically playing cards from your hand. And if you play like a duplicate set of birds, you can kind of trap the ones in the middle and take those into your hand and then try and play them as sets. And sometimes you can play these bigger sets to get 2 cards played in front of you, or just play the smaller ones to get a single card in front of you. And you're basically trying to get one of each of the birds, or trying to get, I think it's 2 sets for 3, I think it is. I could be wrong on that. I think this game really does remind me of a game called Jaipur, which is a strictly 2-player game. A very good kind of back and forth market style game where things are constantly changing. But this one actually caters, I think, 2 to 4 players pretty well. I think it scales very well. And I think I prefer it at 3 players because there's a bit more, the game or the market becomes a bit more alive. Yes, it's a bit more chaotic, but not in a bad way. And I think there's some pretty good layers here in terms of leaving opportunities to your opponent. Being careful when you play things, because when you play cards from your hand, you have to play all the cards of a certain type, and you can't just pick and choose which ones you want and keep something back. And that actually adds to quite a lot of decision, because again, you can leave opportunities for your opponent to capture those birds, because even though you might have them, they might not have them. And yeah, really recommend checking this one out. Hopefully I'll get a review of this one up soon. But yeah, this one is going up and up. So yeah, some 6 to a 6.5, which it might sound minor, but it's not minor in my head. That is quite a jump. So that is Q-Birds. The next game is a decline. So this is a game called Allegory, which is actually a 2021 game. This one was gone from a 6.5, so again, just shy of a recommendation, down to a 5. So a bit of a rapid decline for this one. I think one of the big reasons for this one is that I'm quite enamored with the concept of it. So this is a bidding style game. You're trying to collect these cards in front of you, and you're collecting 3 different or several different types depending on the player count, and only your lowest type or only your lowest colour is going to be your final score. So think of something like Tigris and Euphrates, the way that scores. However, I do like the system, or the concept of the system. When you buy something, or when you win a bid, you place your winning bid and divide them amongst the existing cards there, meaning that the future cards can come with kind of a token bonus to pay for future bids. That's a really cool idea, a really cool concept that I'm surprised hasn't been used before. But I think, unfortunately, in practice, it doesn't work quite as well as I would like. And on top of that, the scoring system is just... It's way too tight. There's way too many negative cards in the game, and sometimes your final score is so low. And additionally, I think there's quite a viable strategy in the game just to buy as much as you can to rush that finish of the game and catch all the other players off guard. Yeah, it's completely viable, but for some reason it just doesn't quite sit well with me. It doesn't quite feel right. So I feel like this has, it's 80% of the way there. It's so close to being good, but unfortunately, for those reasons, it is declining for me. And because I have so many bidding and auction style games in my collection, this one just isn't quite up to the standard of some of the others. So yeah, unfortunately, that's a bit of a decline for Allegory. The next game I'm talking about is a game called Garum, and this is a positive change, and quite a big positive change actually, considering it's gone from a 6.5 to a 7, which is enough to achieve my shield of quality. So this is a relatively unknown game, a puzzly style game. You're trying to place these tiles onto this grid, and on these tiles you've got not only your colour, so everyone's assigned a colour, but also the other player's colours as well. And you're trying to build lines and columns of your colour, and then potentially claim them with meeples in order to score kind of set collection bonuses or sliding scale scoring. So the more symbols you have of your colour in a row or column, you're going to get bigger and bigger points. However, you can really mess with your opponents by manipulating these tiles when you place them to try and, again, knock down their points so they can't get as much potential to get those higher scoring points. Works so well. I've played this a few times now, and it's gone down at quite a big hit every single time. I love the interaction in the game. You have to consider each thing without thinking too much. It's not too overwhelming, and you can pretty logically place something down with minimal effort, but still have a little bit of decision space there. And it just works well for a 30-minute game. Some area control, some stuff like that. A joy to play, a really nice, concise, medium-light game that can cater to a lot of different people. So yeah, happy to give this one a shield of quality. That is Garum. Next up, another negative game going from a 7.5 to a 6.5, so it actually lost my commendation. This one is Res Arcana, and I'm quite sad to say this one actually, because this one, when it's good, it's brilliant. It can be fantastic. However, the most recent games I've had of this one, all the cards that I've ended up kind of drafting into the game just didn't really synergize with each other. It really did kind of stall. It felt like a real chugging kind of pace, and again, nothing gelled. And I think once I lose confidence in a game, I think, it's a bit of a toss of a coin. Are these cards going to work together? Are they not? That is a real kind of a red alarm for me. A bigger warning symbol saying, do not play this game anymore, because it could be good. It could be very, very, very underwhelming. And unfortunately, that's where this game is left for me now. Time is too precious for me. I can't risk playing a game that's not going to be a hit, particularly when it takes, 30 minutes to 60 minutes to play. And yeah, unfortunately, this one is not going to kind of earn my trust back. So still, when it's good, it's brilliant. It can be fantastic when you get the right cards together and they synergize with each other. But again, that slight nagging feeling in the back of my head saying this could go wrong, it could go astray, is just again, it's not going to be enough to stay in my collection because of that. So probably a very unpopular decision because it's an extremely popular and well-received game, but not quite right for me at this point. So that is Res Arcana. Next up, I have Faiyum. So Faiyum is a very strange game by Freedom and Freeze, one that came out last year to, again, little fanfare, nobody's really talking about this one. This one is a real unique game. I have nothing like this in my collection, potentially because of the scoring and the wide variety of cards you have in this game, as you're trying to build a hand of cards and play through these cards in a specific order, and I'll touch on why that's important later, in order to basically build up, build up a city really, or build up a whole civilization. You're building roads, you're building settlements and towns and farms and things, managing resources, converting those resources into points in different ways. However, some of the mechanisms in this game are absolutely fantastic. So you've got some, again, the hand management is great as you're drafting from the a row of cards that uses that kind of power grid system. So all the cards have numbers on them, and just because the lower numbers are in the deck, it doesn't mean they're going to come out first. And I find that quite fascinating. So the pacing of the game changes from game to game. But this hand management system is great as you're playing these cards and using them. But once you take a certain action to pick all those cards back up to use them again, cards get wiped, and you actually can only take 3 cards back and end up paying money for each additional card you want to take back into your hand. And that creates some amazing decision space, and again, really does kind of keep you on your toes and keep your brain ticking along from start to finish. And I will say this game is a perfect example of the more you play it, the better it becomes, because you start to see how the cards start to synergize with each other, and the way the potential to get points work. I will say the end game is a bit swingy at times in this one, but the more you play it, the more that becomes kind of digestible. I'm really fascinated by this game. I thought it was really enjoyable. I did enjoy my first play, of course. It always had my shield of quality. It still holds my shield of quality, but going from a 7.5 to an 8 just shows my confidence in the game after repeated plays. So yeah, that is Faiyum. And the next game is gone from, well, actually just earned my elite shield, so this is like the biggest acclaim I can give to a game. This is Hansa Teutonica, gone from an 8 to an 8.5. This game is just an absolute amazing game, and the way it's put together is fantastic. Almost abstract in its approach as you're trying to build these routes, placing these tokens onto the board, establishing them as your own. You can either establish a trade post, which can potentially get you points, or even try to get upgraded abilities to place more cubes onto the board, or be faster to take stuff from your kind of general supply into your personal supply, getting more points for building these routes. What an absolute masterpiece this game is. Andreas Stedding's best game, no doubt. And I think this one scales very well. I mean, you want to be playing at least 3 players, but 3, 4 or 5 players, it works great. Lots of different maps to play if you have the big box version. And it just is such a low rules overhead, very elegant in its approach, no fat on this game whatsoever, very simple to digest, but the depth and complexity, nuance, sophistication of the game is just off the charts. So brilliant game, and a well-deserved of an elite shield, and I do not hesitate to give it that for a second. So yeah, very happy to finally upgrade Hansa Teutonica to the best of the best. And talking of games with elite shields, so the next game I'm talking about is Glenmore 2 Chronicles. So this one's been sat at around an 8.5 for a long time now, and I've finally upgraded it to a 9, so really up there with the best of the best. So this one is a kind of a rondel or a kind of time track game mixed with tile placement. So you're building up this more, placing tiles, getting resources, converting those resources into points, collecting upgrade tokens, getting unique benefits and powers that nobody else has, moving Scotsmen and meeples around your board to score points in different ways, and to increase your potential to build and expand. The best tile placement game I've ever played, no question. I actually played a really basic game of this, none of the additional modules or the chronicles that come with the game, just a pure fundamental game experience, and I had an absolute blast. And really, sometimes when I play so many new games, I don't get to go back and visit old games so much, but when I get an old game back to the table, sometimes it's just like, this is how it's done, and this is why this one is in my collection. And Glenmore 2 Chronicles is the perfect example of that. Sometimes you forget how good games are, but when you get them back to the table, you think, this really is one of the best games ever made, and that's why I've given it a 9. So that is Glenmore 2 Chronicles. And the final game I'm going to talk about on this installment is Capital Lux 2 Generations. So this one is kind of the hot thing in my collection at the moment. This has gone from an 8.5, so had my Elite Shield, but I've given it a 9. And it's very rare that I give a game of this scope or this weighting a 9. So this is actually a relatively light game. This is only like a medium light game, very easy to understand as you're trying to play cards not only in front of you to score points, but to the capital as well, because if you go higher than the card value in your personal cards than the capital, then you can go bust and end up losing a lot of points. However, you've got to be very careful when you go to the capital, because you get a power for doing so, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. The dynamism of this game is off the charts, the interaction is great, the tenseness, and it's just an absolutely perfect card game. It's modular, you can try lots of different setups, and even the base core game alone is this good. I'd recommend this one to anybody. Even the sci-fi theme, which is something I'm kind of generally turns me off, didn't hinder this one at all, because the game is that good. So a bit of a cheat really, because I've only recently rated this one at an 8.5, but soon after I upgraded it to a 9. I like it that much, and it is that strong of a recommendation from me. So loving Capital Lux 2, and a well-deserved of a 9. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos too. Additionally, be sure to check out kienda.co.uk if you do live in the UK. I do think it's a really good idea or a nice kind of premise to look back at games and see how things have changed over time, because again, we're always looking onto that new thing, always playing new stuff, giving new opinions, and sometimes the older stuff kind of goes to the wayside. So good to give these a bit of spotlight and hopefully see how things have changed over time. So again, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you all next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.